What's up guys? In this video, I'm gonna be upgrading the stock style export brace on my 1966 Mustang with a custom adjustable brace kit from KruseBuilt. Let's take a look at the parts that we're going to install. So these are the parts that come in the kit. And going down, this is kind of almost more or less the layout that's gonna be in the car. We'll get to the hardware here in a second, but you've got adjustable bars. These are gonna be your shock tower mounts. These are gonna go underneath the shock caps. And this will replace kind of where the stock export brace is mounted right now. This will go along the firewall. Again, it'll utilize the same 4 holes that the stock style export brace uses. If you have the brace where you've got the 4 evenly spaced holes, this won't work unless you drill new holes. And in fact, I don't even think any of these holes align, so you'll have to explore that if you have the 4 evenly spaced. And then this is just the support bar in the back. This is gonna go on the inside of the firewall in the cab of the car, and we're gonna mount through here to get to those holes. And that will just add some strength and some stiffening to this whole setup to build it more into the firewall. But we'll go over that when we install it. For the hardware, let's go over what we've got here. These 2 bolts are gonna be the ones in this little bag, are gonna be the ones that go through the brace here into this piece. And then you've got these little spring retainer or bolt retainer washers. These are really, really slick. We'll show you where these go on the shock tower bolts. This is something that's really, really cool part of the kit. You've got your rod ends that are gonna go on each bar. Now pay attention please that there is a left hand and a right hand thread on this. The left hand has got this knurled edge to it. Same thing on this bar. That knurl is telling you that this is the left hand thread. That's important when you're threading these in there because some won't go in, and you're gonna have to figure out which one's going the right end there so that you don't cross thread anything. So there is 2 right hand and 2 left hand rod ends. And you've got the 4 main bolts that are gonna mount this to the flange on the firewall. You've got these 4 bolts that are going to mount 2 here and 2 here for the rod ends. And then these 6 bolts are just in case you need longer bolts for the shock tower. I already have longer bolts in my car from a previous upgrade, but the stock bolts that come in these cars are sometimes not long enough to reach through this thickness of this and through the shock tower, the shock cap. So if you need them, you've got them. If not, no big deal. The first thing we're gonna do, if you have the export brace in your car already, you're gonna wanna remove it. If you don't have one, you still need to take the shock tower caps off. I have aftermarket caps here, but they bolt on in the same place. The only difference being if you had the stock style caps, it probably has the 2 bolts that go on the top of the shock itself, mounted to the top of the cap. You just need to undo those, but we still need to take these 3 bolts off right here to get this cap off. We'll do that on both sides, and then we're gonna take the 4 bolts along the top there on the firewall to get this brace out. One nice part about this install is that we don't need to jack up the car and suppress the spring or do anything with the lower suspension on these cars. This part will just come on off. The shock itself might raise a little bit when you unbolt everything, but you don't have to do anything with the spring behind all this shock tower stuff. And the last thing we're going to take out is those 4 bolts holding the export brace. Now, if you recall earlier, I was talking about those included retaining washers that come in the kit. I've already got them here on my car, but for all those that are familiar with these carriage bolts and how they don't tend to stay in these slots very well, these retaining washers hold them in place, which is fantastic. It makes it easy for mounting this stuff up because you don't have to worry about that bolt falling down. So the next thing we want to do is take the main brace and we're going to mount it to the 4 holes on the firewall flange. Because what we need to do, we need to set this in place so that we can mark where these 2 holes are going to go and get those drilled so we can put the brace on the back side of this inside the firewall. Now that we've got that secured where we want it, we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna mark the holes here on the firewall where we're gonna drill. We're gonna take this back off so we can drill a 1/2 inch hole for these bolts to go through. All right, you can see the 2 marks that I made. So we're gonna go ahead and center punch those and drill it out with a 1/2 inch drill bit. Now be careful when you're drilling these holes that you don't have any wiring or anything in the back on the other side of this firewall. Now we can install this main brace back on the firewall lip, and this is where it'll be installed and stay for good. Now we're going to install the back brace piece on the other side of the firewall, and this is where if you don't have help, you can use some tape just to hold it in place. Then we'll come back on this side and put the bolts through and thread them in. And this is threaded here, so it'll thread right into this piece. And this is what I was talking about earlier about watching out for the wires. I had one of these little mount things right here, and it was just holding wires in the way of where I was drilling, so I had to move that out of the way. Cool, so now I'm gonna put this up in place. I'm gonna use some tape to hold it in there, and then we're gonna put the bolts in. And we're gonna use the 2 fine threaded bolts that come in that little baggie. We're gonna put those in here, thread that in place, and that will grab that bar in the back, and then we're gonna be mounted to there. And then when you get them tightened up, they should look like this on the outside and this on the inside. And you may find you still might need some help, somebody holding that for you. It just depends on how your install goes. Next, if you haven't done so already, let's go ahead and install these retaining springs on here on these bolts. And if you have to put the longer bolts in there, they're included with the kit. Go ahead and get those installed. And then we're gonna put these shock tower mounts on here, and we need this boss back here facing towards the firewall. I'm going to do this on both sides. Next, you're going to want to thread in the rod ends on each end of the bar. Remember, you got a left-hand thread on the end with the knurl on it. And go ahead and just bottom them out as much as you can, because each card is going to be just a little bit different from the space to here. That's the nice thing about this setup, is that you can custom make it fit your car. So we're going to want to place, and it doesn't matter if it goes this way or that way. It doesn't matter. Go ahead and slide this in between the tabs up here. We're going to put just a bolt in just to hold it in place. And then down here, we're going to want to adjust this so that it's just a little bit longer in my case, so that the bolt will fit from here through the rod end and into this plate. We're just going to get it loosely in place for now. We don't need to tighten anything up because we want to secure this down with the spring or with the shock cap. And once everything's secured, then we can go ahead and tighten up these bars. But we will want to put the nut on the bottom of these bolts so that they're secure. And then we'll want to do the same thing on the other side. Now you want to put your shock cap back on and secure that down. Again, remember, if you don't have the long enough bolts, I do include a set in the kit that allows you to have longer bolts for this setup, because of the thickness of this plate. All right, do the same thing on the other side. Now the next step is we're going to tighten these 4 bolts that hold these rod ends in place. All right, once that's all tightened up, the last thing to do is just put a little preload on these, and it might be secure right where you had it. In this case, this one's good. So I'm gonna go ahead and tighten up the jam nuts, and then we'll lock these down. And there it is, that's it. That is the export brace installed, and you're ready to go. All right guys, and it's just that easy. You got about an hour's worth of install time, and then you're back on the road. So you can get this export brace at KruseBuilt.com. You want to check out the website, and while you're there, look at the other parts that are for sale, like this Monte Carlo bar. It complements this export brace. This is the same build style, and they look like they match, and it continues to jazz up your engine bay, probably what you're looking for. Anyways, KruseBuilt.com. We'll see you in the next one.